Hello and welcome to Northern Souls Podcast. So today I wanted to talk about the way forward in paganism, and I was going to use some examples from my own life just to kind of illustrate my points. I will say I'm not using these examples from my life as to garner pity. Um, it's just to give people a better idea of what I'm talking about and what I mean. And hopefully, if somebody else is struggling, just let them know that they're not alone. Um, and I've found that by using examples and using analogy, it's a lot easier to get your point across. So that's the other reason why I'm using my own examples. So yeah, with that out of the way, we'll just go ahead and dig in. So the biggest one that I wanted to talk about is being true to yourself and who you are, and not seeking to please others and trying to force yourself to fit into a prescribed mold. Um, this is something that I've struggled with a lot. I grew up in a family with a very blue collar background. American working class hero type with Protestant Christian work ethic, and where your job is your identity. And I tried going through a whole bunch of different jobs, um, trying to find a sense of meaning, but I have job hopped so much it's ridiculous. Before I just, finally said, all right, screw this. What do you want out of life? So like for example, um, I did law enforcement. I was in the military, and I was in military police. And the whole reason why I thought about law enforcement in the first place is because I wanted to protect children from monsters. So I was like, hey, what better way to do that than being law enforcement? But I found out real quick that law enforcement was not for me at all, and it had very little to do with protecting children or protecting people in general. Um, yeah, I found out that real quick. Perhaps it should have been obvious to me, but I don't know. I tend to be the kind of person who needs to learn through the school of hard knocks. But yeah, when you are a cop, you are despised, and it takes a very particular kind of resilience to deal with that when you are universally disliked, because effectively you're the party pooper, you know. Um, and you have to enforce all these rules, especially the ones that you really don't give a crap about. But that's your job, and you got to do it. And yeah, uh, without going into too much detail, like I absolutely hated that. Um, then when I got out, I kind of meandered for a bit, trying to figure out what I wanted out of life, and started going to college. And at first, I tried doing computer science because it's like, oh, you can make a lot of money like doing that, and I'm a smart guy, and a lot of the people I used to hang out with when I was like in high school and stuff before I joined the military were nerds. So it's like, well, you're kind of a nerd, so you should be good at this. And no, I absolutely hated it. Um, there is something about just staring at code on a computer screen that just makes me want to pull my hair out and shoot my face off. So yeah, needless to say, that didn't last long. And then I decided to go do political science as I was pretty interested in politics at the time. Honestly, I was obsessed with it, and probably not in a good way. And I figured, oh, I can do political science. Maybe I'll run for a political office and impose my worldview on everyone else. Um, and maybe even use it as a launch pad to get into law school. So I went ahead, I got my bachelor's degree in political science, and thought I knew all this stuff about politics and how the world should be run and fancied myself an expert on the subject. And then I started studying for the LSAT, which is it's basically the test to get into law school, right? And I was doing the practice tests, and even though I kind of like logical puzzles, like there's a part of me that kind of enjoys that kind of boring, nerdy crap where you just get into the details, logical details of what someone is saying and blah, 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 blah. It got to such a point where I was like, I can't handle this. And I knew in my heart of hearts that that wasn't the thing for me. Um, and I ended up taking the test to get into law school anyways, because by the time I decided I wasn't going to go, uh, I already paid for the test. So it was kind of just to see how I did. And even without studying, I actually did pretty well. But I just knew in my heart of hearts, it wasn't something that I wanted to do. And like, it was something that I would have had to make a 3-year commitment to. I had no idea how I was going to pay for it or how I was going to provide for myself and my family while going to school. So I was like, okay, there's all these negatives. And I was kind of like, and why are you doing it again? Why are you doing this thing that you don't want to do? So I ditched that. And for a long time, I just didn't know what to do with myself. And it wasn't until something finally clicked with me that I realized that the entirety of my adult life, I was trying to fit into a pre prescribed mold that had been created for me first by my parents that, if you want to get ahead in life, then, you have to have a job and that's your identity for the rest of your life. And that's all you have to do. And, that's life. I'd rather kill myself than do that. Yeah, just being honest, that sounds like an absolutely miserable existence to me personally. If that works for you, that's cool. But to me personally, that sounds like hell. Then I also found that, especially with a lot of the other careers that I was pursuing, I was doing it for status to look good to other people. Like, oh, look, I, got this job, this high paying job. And I'm like hot stuff. I'm like, look at me. Wow, I'm so cool. Whereas what I realized was I was neglecting my true self and what I wanted out of life. The one thing that's always interested me is religion, mythology, like that kind of stuff has always fascinated me ever since I was a child. Like even when I was a Christian, in the parts of the Bible that I would read, it was always like the stories where they're telling stories about different prophets or, the Gospels of Jesus. I always liked the stories he would tell. But anything outside of that, like talking about how you should live your life, I always found that stuff boring as all get out. um, and the other thing that has always interested me is uh, psychology and mental health and spirituality, taking care of yourself. And when I discovered astrology, and when I found out, no, it is not BS, and there are all these uses for it, it just felt like coming home. It felt like I finally found something that uh, would help me be me and help me find my own purpose in life. You know, and that's my thing. Is I've found so many people are so afraid to be true to themselves and are so afraid to be honest with themselves. But once you finally cross that threshold, you'll find that the world just like opens up for you in a way that it never did before. So yeah. Anyways, it's kind of like a launching pad for like my next talking point. And this one is like a very weird one, right? So in paganism, it's always a big deal. Ancestor veneration, your people, your roots. It's a really big deal. And family values are huge. And I always counsel people to try to make things work with your family as much as you can. Because that's the other thing too with a lot of pagans today is unfortunately that even within their own family, uh, they're loners. They're the only one who's a pagan and everybody else is like a Christian. That's especially a problem here in America, right? And I always try to counsel people to um, keep them in your lives, because you share a bond with those people that's very special, a shared history, a shared origin story, and you don't just get that from anywhere. That being said, there are absolutely times when you should walk away. And this is something that's very personal for me, but that's something that I have done, um, especially with my mother's side of the family. And I have very specific reasons for that. And I had to do it in a very specific way. One of the ways that you do not do it is in anger or hate or bitterness, because I know perhaps a lot of people came from abusive households. So, very understandably, they're deeply hurt and angered about that. And I completely understand where people are coming from, as I came from an abusive household too. I was frequently growing up made to uh, feel like a criminal or the worst piece of scum on the face of the earth whenever I misbehaved. And funnily enough, pretty much everything I did when I quote unquote misbehaved was like little things that every kid does. And when I really started thinking back on it, I was just like, wow, that's pretty messed up, you know? Um, and there were times where, I wanted to have like this big blow up confrontation, with my parents where, I really tell them what's what and, basically be like, F you, you suck, whatever. And like, you ruined my life. And, I'm in such a bad place because of you. And what I realized was that that doesn't solve anything. And it's just petty. It's just being petty. And nobody wins that one. And then I just remain resentful and bitter over a past that cannot change because what's done is done. And you're not really breaking generational abuse by remaining in that cycle of anger. That the best way to move forward is to accept what happened, and that the best revenge is not being that. So like personally, I was raised by my mom and my stepfather, and just I can see all the things that my stepfather is, just objectively speaking, and I'm just like, I don't have any room in my life for any of that nonsense. Why am I getting so upset about this guy when that's something that I'm doing to myself? When you're a kid, you have no control over what happens to you, or very little control. But when you're an adult, all the autonomy is placed back on you. You don't have to be a product of your circumstances. And I think that's the biggest lesson a lot of people from abusive households need to learn is you are not a product of your circumstances. Life, if you believe life is happening to you, then you're always going to be a victim. And that's just how it is. So I had to find a way to let go of my anger and hatred and resentment. And even though there's probably always going to be a part of me that is kind of like, man, I really wish things were different when I was a kid, and I was given what I was needed. Uh, at the end of the day, that's just never going to change. And the more I've learned about paganism is that's how it was always supposed to be. Fate, weird. It was weaved a long time ago. And it's up to you to change the pattern in such a way that it doesn't happen again. It is the best way to give back to your ancestors, because you have shown that you can do what they could not. They were not strong enough to do what they ought have done, but you are. And it's also a blessing to your descendants, because then they don't have to deal with that. And you can give them the tools to be assertive people, to be honorable people, without giving them the burden of sorting out a fucked up origin story. The other reason that I walked away from my family, because it's not just my parents. Like, I also have 3 brothers, a sister. I have a boatload of aunts and uncles, even more cousins. One of the biggest reasons why I walked away, and again, it's not out of anger or hatred, is I realized just how bad Christianity destroyed my family generationally. And I found that nearly all my family members have the pathological altruism in Christianity that you especially see in left-leaning, politically speaking, Christians. But they don't prioritize their own family in the way that they ought to. And they're always seeking to please perceived authority figures, even if that means it's to the detriment of their own family. And what's really sad is that none of them are doing it on purpose. None of them are trying to be mean to anybody. And it's just like this weird, bizarre generational trauma that I kind of uncovered. This pattern that I found. And, I can't make them aware of it. I can't make them change. You can talk about it until you're blue in the face, but at the end of the day, it's up to them to deal with it. And what I found by staying around them was I was not getting what I needed emotionally. Like, I can count so many times where I was pushed off to the side, ignored, forgotten about, or not seen for who I am when it really mattered, when it counted. And again, I'm not saying this isn't coming out of a place of resentment or bitterness. It's just calling it like it is, seeing things as they are, and just choosing to walk away, because I learned the hard way that in order for me to be who I need to be, for me to pursue my own weird, I had to walk away. An example that I like to use is, for those who are unaware, is one of the biggest reasons that I think it's like nearly 3/4 of the world speak an Indo-European language, is because of a ritual that all Proto-Indo-European boys had to go through before they were considered men. It's called the Corios tradition, and basically they'd be cast out of the village with nothing but like skin of a dog, I believe, and they'd be forced to survive for a few months, and it was completely on them to figure it out, right? And what they did is sometimes, they'd go back home, but other times they'd go somewhere and they would just stay there. And then they, would have kids with the women there. And that's why, nearly every European language and a number of Asian languages too are ultimately from this one language branch. And what I found was that I had to look at it as I'm one of the Curios who left home and never came back, not because I died, but because I was destined to go somewhere else, you know. So it's not like I'm leaving my family because, oh, they just suck and I hate them and F those guys. It's just because I'm just not meant to be there. And the reason why I'm putting it out there is I want other people to be aware that for some people, that's probably what you got to do. That being said, again, I do counsel people trying to make amends with a family, and certainly don't leave people behind out of anger, because the only one who loses on that one is you at the end of the day. It'll eat you up from the inside out. Trust me on this one. So I hope y'all got something out of this. It was a pretty emotional one for me. I hope y'all got something out of this. If you did, go ahead, leave a comment, share it, and yeah, stay tuned for more. We'll see you next time.